There's a sentence no football federation should ever have to say about a World Cup. On Friday, Iran said it. "We are the most oppressed team in this tournament." That wasn't a frustrated fan online. That wasn't a pundit chasing a headline. That was Amir Galanoui, head coach of Iran's national team, describing his side's experience at the 2026 World Cup in terms no coach at any previous tournament has had to use. And in the days since, Iran's football federation did something very few national federations ever do in the middle of a World Cup. They filed a formal complaint against the very organization running the tournament they qualified to compete in. Today, we're walking through exactly what happened, why it happened, what FIFA's role actually is, and what this says about a tournament that keeps generating as many headlines off the pitch as on it. Let's start with what triggered all of this, because what Iran is describing is genuinely without precedent in World Cup history. According to Iranian sports officials, US authorities imposed a strict entry window on the Iranian squad. They cannot arrive more than 24 hours before kickoff, and they must leave the same day their match ends. 24 hours. For a World Cup fixture, compare that to every other team at this tournament. Standard preparation for a major international match, let alone a World Cup game, typically means arriving 2 or 3 days early. Time to recover from travel, train on local pitches, adjust to the time zone and climate, and get familiar with the conditions of the host city. That preparation window isn't a preference. It's considered a basic competitive standard at the highest level of the sport. Iran doesn't have access to it. Because of the visa and travel restrictions between Iran and the United States, the Iranian Federation made the decision to base their entire World Cup camp not in America at all, but in Mexico. Think about what that actually means. A team with group stage matches in Los Angeles and Seattle is living and training across an international border for the whole tournament. Every match means the entire squad, coaching staff, medical team, and support personnel crossing from Mexico into the United States, playing the game. And in many cases heading straight back across that same border almost immediately after. No other team at this tournament is dealing with anything close to that. Every other qualified nation can set up a base near their host cities, maintain a steady training routine, and prepare the way international football has always assumed teams would be able to. Iran is operating under an entirely different set of rules, not because of anything football related, but because of the diplomatic relationship between their country and the host nation. And this isn't just an inconvenience the team quietly worked around. According to the federation's own statement, it directly affected their performance on the pitch. Iran drew 2-2 with New Zealand in their opening match, and Galanoui was direct about what he believed contributed to that result. He said the disruption hurt Iran's preparation, explaining that the coaching staff's original plan required arriving 2 days before each match to reach what he called optimal technical and physical condition, then returning to base the day after. That plan wasn't possible under the current restrictions, and a coach who has spent his entire career building around exactly that kind of preparation window watched his team be denied it on the biggest stage in the sport. Iran's football federation responded by announcing a formal complaint to FIFA. Their statement was carefully worded but pointed. These restrictions, they said, are inconsistent with the principle of equal conditions for all participating teams, and the situation could affect their technical preparation for the rest of the tournament. That phrase, equal conditions for participating teams, sits at the very heart of what a World Cup is supposed to guarantee every nation that qualifies. Not identical conditions, because no two countries share the same resources, travel distances, or football infrastructure, but conditions comparable enough that results are decided by football, not by logistics imposed from outside the sport. Iran's argument is that a 24-hour entry window, forced cross-border travel, and no access to a standard preparation schedule goes well beyond the normal variation teams experience at a World Cup. This isn't a team complaining about a long flight or unfamiliar weather. This is a team arguing that the basic structural conditions of their participation have been altered in a way that affects actual match results, and Iran's situation hasn't happened in isolation. It's part of a broader pattern of access and entry complications that have shaped this tournament's opening week in ways nobody fully anticipated when the hosting rights were awarded. A FIFA-appointed match official was denied entry to the United States entirely, despite holding official tournament credentials issued by FIFA itself. Supporters from multiple qualified nations were denied travel visas despite holding valid purchased match tickets. Iran's federation separately reported that its official ticket allocation was withdrawn in the days before their opening match. leaving Iranian supporters who held legitimate federation-issued tickets unable to use them at all. Stack all of that together, and Iran's formal complaint isn't just one frustrated federation venting. It's the most visible and most institutionally significant sign yet of a pattern that's been building since before the tournament even started. A pattern that keeps coming back to the same central question. Who actually gets full access to this World Cup, and on what terms? So where does FIFA fit in? Because Iran's complaint isn't directed at the US government, it's directed at FIFA. The organization that owns this tournament, sets its rules, awards hosting rights, and is supposed to guarantee fair competition across every host nation. As of Friday, neither FIFA nor the US Department of Homeland Security had publicly responded to the complaint. That silence matters. It puts FIFA exactly where it has found itself. More than once already during this tournament's opening days, caught between the immigration authority of a host nation and the competitive obligations it owes to every team that spent years qualifying to be here. This is genuinely new ground for the tournament, and it's worth being honest about why. Previous World Cups have had travel complications, political tensions, and logistical headaches for visiting nations. That's nothing new. But a multi-country hosting format where a qualified team can be forced to base its entire camp in one host country while competing in another creates exactly the kind of situation Iran is now facing. That situation simply didn't exist when every previous World Cup was staged entirely within the borders of a single country. Set the politics aside entirely for a moment and think about it purely from a football standpoint. Every person in the sport understands how much preparation time matters at this level. The difference between arriving several days early, having trained on the match pitch, adjusted to the climate and time zone, settled in properly, versus landing the day before, playing, and leaving that same evening. That difference can be the gap between a team performing at its best and a team simply trying to survive 90 minutes. Iran's coaching staff clearly believed that gap was real, and that it cost them points. They said so publicly and on record, attributing the result of their opening match directly to circumstances completely outside their control. It's worth being careful here about what we actually know versus what remains unclear, because that distinction matters in a story like this. FIFA has not publicly confirmed or denied the specifics of Iran's complaint. The exact nature of the restrictions, whether they stem from a security designation, an existing visa policy, or some other classification, hasn't been fully explained by either side. What is confirmed on the record is the Federation's official statement, the head coach's public comments, and the straightforward fact that Iran's entire World Cup camp is based in Mexico, not in the United States where their matches are actually being played. What happens next is genuinely uncertain. Iran has 2 group stage matches remaining, and the Federation's stated hope is that FIFA reviews the situation before the tournament moves any further. A few realistic paths exist from here. FIFA could try to work directly with US authorities to arrange some kind of adjusted entry process for Iran's remaining fixtures, though that would require a level of diplomatic coordination well outside football's normal territory. Alternatively, FIFA could acknowledge the disadvantage exists, but conclude it has no power to override a sovereign nation's immigration rules, leaving Iran to finish the tournament under the same conditions they've already been dealing with. Or, perhaps most likely, given how things have gone so far, the situation continues without any formal resolution at all, quietly becoming one of several access and fairness issues that end up defining this tournament's overall legacy once it's done. None of those outcomes are guaranteed. And it's worth noting that FIFA's president previously responded to other access controversies at this same tournament by telling people to chill and relax, in a response that did nothing to ease tensions when applied to the earlier case of the match official denied entry entirely. Whether that same approach gets used on a formal complaint backed by an entire National Football Association remains to be seen. What is clear, regardless of how FIFA responds, is that this story has outgrown logistics and travel arrangements. It's now a much bigger question about what a World Cup actually promises the nations that earn their way into it. Every team that goes through qualification, the years of work, the matches won and lost, the moment a place at the finals is finally secured, does so with the basic expectation that once they get there, the competition will be fair. Not perfectly identical conditions for every nation, but comparable enough that what happens on the pitch is decided by football. Iran is now arguing, formally and on the record, that this basic promise has not been kept in their case, and they've put that argument in writing, directly to the one organization whose job it is to answer it. For the Iranian players, this adds a layer of difficulty most footballers never have to deal with at a World Cup, crossing an international border before and after every match, living in a camp that isn't even in the country where they're competing, carrying all the normal pressure of representing your nation on the biggest stage in the sport, plus the added weight of knowing your preparation has been compromised by things entirely outside your control and entirely outside football itself. And for Iranian supporters, those who held legitimate tickets and found their access quietly taken away, those who simply wanted to watch their team compete on the same terms as everyone else, this is its own kind of disappointment. One that has nothing to do with the score on the pitch and everything to do with whether the tournament they'd waited 4 years for gave their team a fair chance from the very beginning. What do you think? Should FIFA step in when a host nation's immigration rules create a real, measurable disadvantage for a team that legitimately qualified? Or is this simply outside football's reach, however unfair it feels to the people living through it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Subscribe if you want to keep following how this develops. This story is still moving, and as always, football never stays quiet for long.